This is episode 9, The Colors of Life. It's been over 11 years since I've seen Wendy Vanguard, who 20 years ago was my first ever boss. Wendy is an award-winning broadcast designer for television and film, designing corporate image for companies like Time Warner Cable, local LA TV stations like KCAL and KABC, CBS Entertainment, CBS News, HBO, National Geographic, the Movie Channel, and titles for television shows like The Rockford Files, $6 Million Man, and Planet of the Apes. Wendy is a wise woman and was a fantastic mentor into the working world of freelance art and design. Even though I ended up going into music, the experience of being near Wendy and watching her work helped me grow in so many ways. This conversation runs a little long, but it's well worth the listen. So I won't take any more time with the introduction. Please enjoy my conversation with illustrator, conceptual artist, and award-winning designer, Wendy Vanguard. This is the Language of Creativity podcast.
This is really a nice room.
I love it.
The blue color's perfect.
What would you call this color?
Ultramarine blue.
Thank you.
Because this is the same color I had in my studio when I had California Film, and I had about a 4,000 square foot space on Santa Monica Boulevard in Crescent Heights, West Hollywood. And it was probably the first open space plan for workers, artists. And I had a loft, and the whole wall behind it was this color, this deep blue. And then I'd have a few accent colors, but everything else was pretty neutral, gray, wood, white. But there was that color, and I had another wall I had red somewhere, an accent. But the blue was so calming.
It is. It's calming and inspiring at the same time.
Yeah.
And I associate it with intuition and speaking because of the chakra colors.
Yes.
So
right, absolutely.
For me, it's been interesting because a lot of people who are gifted have been seeing blue around me lately. I go to an acupuncture lady and she's intuitive and she's like, oh, you have all this blue around you. And so it's cool because as I'm working on the podcast and I'm opening up to sharing more of myself and being authentic, the blue has really become me in a way.
I think that's really important to have a color to define yourself with what feels true. So you can call that true blue.
Yeah, true blue. Ultramarine blue.
But ultramarine is a little bit, probably a deep ultramarine blue in terms of pure pigment color. It's a little bit cooler and have a little bit more, a hint more of magenta, just a little deeper. But so this is true blue, let's call it.
Yeah, it does. It feels like the base color for blue.
Yes, yeah.
What was interesting was the acoustician wanted to move that spaghetti white stuff on this wall. And I said to my dad, I'm like, Dad, do you think that works? And he's like, no. And I'm like, what do you think about putting this fabric swatch up here? And he's like, that'll look great. He's like, do it.
Good for him.
So we built in the TV kind of inset.
It's a gorgeous. And so I could look at that if I'm an artist here recording or I'm playing music or something, and you're on the other side mixing or whatever it is you're doing, I could see you.
Correct. Yeah, so that's how we did the window. And that worked out really good.
I could see anything in there.
Just whatever I point the camera at.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I was thinking about using...
And these are all personal, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, so let's talk about the blue sphere. Let me send it to you.
I've never shared my art before. The only thing I use is the blue sphere as my icon in my social media. If I have any, it's like I don't ever put a picture of me. That's what represents me.
Okay, so let's talk about the blue sphere horizon as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the other thing I sent you was the master thesis when I was in school. All the emphasis was put on being a successful in business as an artist or designer, and none of that related to my quest. And so I decided to just make moving pictures and paintings, and I received a master's grant for these little series of paintings I was doing, which were completely abstract. And then I abandoned it because I had a grant, but I still had to support myself and get many different freelance jobs as an artist. So I abandoned the quest of getting that done. And then I revisited it over the years. And recently, in revisiting it, I went back to that abstraction of a nothingness, of spheres, of orbs, of how their universe is built on this mysterious, symmetrical glob in action, and nothing is still. And so that's what I'm revisiting now in this later decades of my life, when I actually am going to put time aside for that quest, along with being a woman and raising granddaughters now.
Well, the interesting thing when I was looking at Blue Sphere was it reminded me of the work that I experienced you doing with motion graphics.
Yes.
You did a lot of work for Rhythm and Hues.
Yes.
You did a lot of work, which now went away, but
Yes.
they're the people who are behind the Tiger film. What was that one called?
The Tiger film.
The one with the boy with the tiger and the boat.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Beautiful film.
It was,
And
indeed.
So let's talk about the Blue Sphere. So Blue Sphere Horizon depicts, to me, it's like there's the color blue, and then there's this earthy, skin tony color at the bottom. And to me, it's like body and soul. It has this very, they're very connected. They're touching each other. They're sort of intermingling at the middle, but there's a reflection of the blue onto what you would call, I guess, the ground or the horizon. So there's a lot of feeling of water meeting earth in this painting.
Well put.
And it's on oil. So the original was 60 by 48, right?
It's a big painting.
Yeah.
It took a lot of gesture to get that done. And I think when I'm in that painting mode, there's no thought process, there's no logic. It's just a happening. It's in process. And it is a very soulful thing. And the majesty of like going outside in a truly dark sky and experience the vastness of where we are on this globe spinning through space. That mystery is always fascinating to me. And that's the miracle that we're in. And so that's what comes forth in the action of painting without thought. For me, it becomes an experience. It's very much a therapy, living in an urban environment. And we can talk about that, all the pressures of that.
Yeah. Well, and I do sense the motion. I sense the deep perception of color and its impact on the psyche.
Yes.
And I also can perceive that maybe even, I'm curious for you, when you're looking at something, how much are you looking at it or how much are you feeling it?
I think it's feeling, definitely. And color has always impacted me. And some people are not impacted by color. It's definitely a trait that some of us have. And color is emotional to me. And so, yes, I feel what I see.
Yeah, and that's where the work with the Blue Sphere makes me perceive, it's like almost like seeing the world through your eyes a little bit.
Yes, I would say so. But coming from a fascination with science and the physics and the mystery that's unraveled over the human history, how the human mind is always like trying to figure out, like, why does this work? Why did that fall? Where are we in space? Getting a microscope and finding out that things are not solid and there's things inside of themselves. And I did have the experience of working on Powers of 10, a movie with the Eames office with Charles Eames, the color film, and I was a painter for that. And so I got to experience before computer, three-dimensional computer and be able to build things with numbers and understanding fractals and all that stuff. Before any of that, his vision was to show exponential numbers. Like, how do you explain it? And so his idea was, let's go 10 meters for every 10 seconds visually, from looking down at a blanket in Chicago of a couple and then going down into the hand and then through the skin.
Oh, that
and
powers
going,
of 10.
Yes. And
Whoa.
and going down into the molecular and the atoms. And that time, our knowledge was we discovered that quarks existed. And so my job was to visualize from the skin cells and molecules into the atomic structure and to the level of a quark, and as 4x4 paintings. And so, never having really finished any academic college, but an art college, my learning came from mentors, that physicists that would come and explain everything to me, because there were no computer drawings of things.
Wow.
And so I was a conceptual artist, visualizing things that we could only imagine mathematically through science discovery. So that was one of my journeys, and it certainly deepened my fascination with physics and nuclear physics. And I did an exhibit early before that on the science of electricity. And again, that was early in my career, and I had to visualize what a resistor was electronically, what electromagnetism is, and then what fission is as opposed to fusion. And I had to sketch it out as an artist, as a concept sketch. So I artistically did that, and learned, wait, this is really cool. So, of course, all that affected my personal art, because, and then computers came along, and thank goodness I didn't have to pretend to draw 3D by hand, one frame at a time, then one field at a time. And what a relief, So moving into my other career of doing motion graphics and working with now, computers, people, engineers, and people that actually, are able to move things abstractly and work with them, it all kind of tied together. And it goes back to my early art, my early paintings, my early thesis of these are spheres moving around in space. Here we go. There.
I don't have to look at your thesis for you to talk about it. So why don't you share a little bit about your thesis?
I was finishing Art Center my last year. I attended that straight through. I was going to that school because I wanted to be an artist, thinking that I could do illustration and do all these wonderful things as a personal artist and change the world. And then because of the nature of the school, which was much more, let's make you a successful, profitable addition to society as a designer and art director. And so that's all positive and wonderful. However, it put me into a path that just didn't feel good. It's wait, I want to paint, I want to do these things. I don't want to be constrained by, an art director, creative director, or, how much money I'm going to make or get a job at a studio. None of that sounded horrifying to me at that time. And so I said, no, I just want to go into fine art. So they accepted that, and because I did a series of paintings. And Lorcer Fidelson was on the board at Art Center at the time, and he's a master fine artist of the hard edge of the 50s. So his expertise as a true fine artist, he developed, during the 50s and the 60s, a style of art. It's called hard edge painting. And his wife, Helen Lunderberg, was also an artist, much less known because at that time, being a woman artist, you kind of were overlooked, though her imagery and her concept is totally spoke to me. Meanwhile, Lorcer Fidelson was my mentor at the time, and he saw in my work something no one else saw. And he said, yes, we want you to do this. And so, and they asked, what is it? And all it was a bunch of spheres moving around, blue spheres in boxes, because I discovered film and fell in love with film. And so you don't just do one image, you do at least 3 or 4, tell a story. Things are always evolving. And so that was my thesis. And it was very simple, just oil on board, on canvas, and so abstract. I thought, well, no one will relate to this. It's just completely weird. But he saw something. And because of that, I moved to the next level and subsequently abandoned it because I had to earn money and pay rent, find a place, buy some, certainly trying to afford, pay a studio and giant, canvases and oils was like, there's no way I could ever have done that and actually had food to eat. So,
Yeah.
And as I got work and professional work, I fell in love with that because I was serving a purpose and I was helping people achieve what they wanted. And that was the beginning of being an image designer and solving people's problems and being like an artist for hire on whatever individual projects they were, which was so fascinating. That's thus the Eames office and different random things and films and ultimately my own company for a while, thus leaving a part behind all of my personal work.
Wow.
Which decades later I can revisit because it never left me. I think as an artist, life and children and family take over for those seasons, and yet the inherent vision you have on the inside of like this desire, this human desire to express oneself and to share. Why? Just because we're that kind of species, I guess. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me how your work evolved into something you had no idea it could become.
True.
You didn't know that computers were coming.
No. It was like, wow, that's so cool. Like, yes. I did not.
What was that like for you when you had to learn to work on a Mac and with a stylus?
Yes. Okay, well, that came a lot later because during the computer age, when we were doing motion graphics and then using people like PDI or Rhythm and Hues or the really talented, smart people that came along, then it was collaborating with great minds and people that wanted to solve, like, here's a sketch. Can you do this? Like, oh, well, yeah, I guess we could figure that out. We'll have to write some code. What, you want light, casting a shadow, a palm branch on a wall? Yeah. Wow, we don't have any light blurs yet. So I got to be involved with the process of people solving a technical problem because they were fascinated with doing a good job also. And so that collaboration process is really wonderful because together you're creating something new that didn't exist before. So I got to do that for a number of years. And then when I downsized and no longer had a staff of people that weren't able to use the computers and Macs and whatever. And suddenly I was just me and nothing. And I had projects coming. I thought I better get, I need to get a Mac, So I did. And then the next day I had a project due, like a presentation for some, project. I don't know what it was anymore. And I did not know, no one was there. It was just me. So I had to figure out Photoshop, all those things on the fly, get it printed, go present. And I thought, wow, we took what I'd have 12 people to do on staff and consolidated it to a desktop. What the heck? There's good things and bad things because I do that now. All my work is remote. I have a desktop and laptop and I work remote and collaborate remotely. However, we do miss the group of collaborating face to face, going through the process with other people. I do miss that.
I used to paint light and shadows for you.
Yes, you did.
And we would go into Photoshop.
Yeah.
And this was my first ever job. Wendy was my first ever boss. And she was my mentor in that regard in the working world. And so she trained me to go into Photoshop and create, use a certain type. And then you stroke the type. And this was before there was a drop shadow effect in Photoshop.
Oh, yeah, before there were any filters.
So you create a stroke marquee around the type. And then you have to paint the light side with a whitish color and by hand, and then you have to paint the shadowy side, and then you have to blur. You have to make a copy of the text and turn it black and blur it, and then drop it below.
Yeah, rasterize it from a vector. Oh yeah.
And you'd say, okay, no, a little up, no, a little down, no, that's not right.
We faked everything.
Yeah.
It's all movie making.
Yeah.
You learned well because you came from as a young man, 16.
Yeah.
You were 16. You came in this bright young man, really smart, but coming from what I would call the PC world.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh gosh, PC world. I respect that world now. And
I don't. I've gone back and never come back.
See, I know. Thank God. Thank God. Good for you, Steve. So you've come around. You've come a long way. Yeah, those Word docs for Word invoices. Yeah, I can do an invoice. It's a Word doc. That is so ugly. I'm going to have to help you design a good invoice. It's like, and that's my art direction snobbery that came from,
No, you can't use a serif font. It has to be a sans serif font.
For this, we need. Yeah, no, we're not going to use, Myriad. Or whatever those were. So the default fonts.
We're going to use Futura because it's part of our branding.
Exactly. So.
Did I just let out a trade secret?
No.
Okay.
That's one of many fonts, but branding. Branding is a whole other thing. Before, when I was doing all that work and we were doing the work, we didn't call it branding.
Yeah.
That is a much newer, now a very standard thing, a very helpful terminology, actually. Thinking that comes from branding a cow or a bull, you own it because you're branding. So that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, creating an imprint.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, imprinting young minds,
Yeah, we could tangent really well on that one, but we will show restraint. I like to say this is my show and we tangent all the time, but...
And we need a little bit about your involvement in all this and why we're here.
My involvement and why we're here.
Yes, in other words, you called me. We've stayed in touch, and I've watched your journey and appreciation of a whole spectrum of art and music, appreciates the sensitivity that comes from that, and that when I saw you as a young man, I think there, in earlier times, a lot of that is squelched in young people.
Yes.
Unless you escape and run away or tell people just to be quiet or pretend that you're listening, but you're not. You're going to how can I get out of here and do my own thing? Is it okay? Will they judge me? It's a really tough road for a young artist or someone who's creative, and you just don't fit in, you just don't fit in with what's around you.
Well, I think the art world was my first exposure to free thinking because I experienced music in the church, and there's a freedom in that, but there's also a lot of structure and a lot of ideas about how we do and don't do things. And the art world is so much more in tune with itself and its free expression. And hey, I'm an artist. Of course, I'm a little quirky. And so for me, that was my first foray into being around people who quietly or otherwise authentically knew themselves and really had a means for genuine expression.
Yes. I think there's an aspect of courage or stupidity or stubbornness to, make your way in spite of everything. I'm still going to do this. I'm going to do it.
I think that applies to musicians as well.
Absolutely.
But I think for
music
me,
and art are the same thing as far as I'm concerned. They're an expression.
It was good to learn how other art forms translated into the technical expression of emotional ideas, because I had taught myself that with music and recording, and I taught myself computers and things like that. And I think for me, I was a little ahead of the curve on what became YouTube or multimedia.
Absolutely.
And I wish that I had pursued filmmaking more, because I think had I done some of my early projects and YouTube existed, then I might have been able to have more of a platform, but in censor no mistakes. So part of that is me learning about watching the progression of the technology and watching films go from hand-drawn animation to Pixar, watching all those things, literally being in the middle of watching the internet boom, learning how
amazing.
We used to dial up modems at work.
Absolutely.
And I think I really think I was on the cusp as a young man of so many changes between old world and new world ways of doing things. So I still bring that old world way of working and collaborating to a new world setting. And I think for me, that's a passion to reconnect people together, and also to how do we create collaborations where we're working with people face to face and we're sharing energy and ideas and creativity together, as opposed to trying to take on everything and just save a buck here or there. It affects the process, but I think it affects the end result. And I think it also affects the artist. A lot of artists are introverted, so that's a natural thing to kind of want to isolate. But I think as an extroverted person, I think this applies to introverts as well. But as an extroverted person, I thrive on collaboration. So a lot of my challenges once I became freelance and started doing work on my own, they came from loneliness.
Yes.
They came from looking at the work for too long and not knowing when to take a break because somebody wasn't able to say, oh, hey, why don't we go outside? Or, hey, did you think of this? Or, hey, we're spending a long time on this. Can we take a break?
Absolutely.
And sometimes you just need that fresh energy. And I feel like we had a version of that when you had the design firm with 3 people.
Yes.
It's like every time there was the 3 of us in there, we would sort of bounce off a little bit, and then you'd kind of go, okay, I need to shut my door and just kind of go off into my little world right now.
Yes.
And then you'd have times where you're like, okay, I just need to take a break. I need to be around people now.
It would be nice. We didn't have doors.
It's true. Yeah. It was open plan.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was like, this whole little, cone of silence
would go
around Wendy.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were always on a deadline. That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's the tough part because when art is deadline driven, and whether it's music
yes,
or imagery or whatever the project is, that's a whole other aspect of whether you're doing personal art. Are we doing a personal deadline we set for ourselves and then we're frustrated or disappointed or we never reached that goal? Or are we just being a professional? What's the division? Like for me, I have to divide up in my work. This is a project, a professional project. I give as much care and excellence to it because that's my nature. We're darn, that's what we do. So then I have to factor in the time aspect of it. And do I, burn out? Do I get it done? Was there issues? And so you have the same thing because sometimes your work is client-based and you're providing a service and there's a deadline, you get it out for them. But then as a personal level, life is the deadline. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
I can still do stuff. I'm not sure how long it's going to last. Any day it could end. However, we are working with the deadline.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. And, it's funny because I really struggle with that a lot. My nature is to perform well when there's not someone imposing. And I think that's common to a lot of artists. And I think that hamstrings a lot of artists too, and they decide not to do art anymore because if you're doing it for other people, it can lose the joy.
Oh, man. So true. Let's just talk about that for a minute. Being an artist means, for me, if I go in my studio, which is rare when I get the time to go in my studio, and I just let myself enjoy, I get lost in the enjoyment of what I'm doing, and the world disappears. And there is, I don't know, I'm in such a wonderful place. It's just very peaceful. Sometimes not so peaceful, but it's hard work, but it's enjoyable. It's
right.
Very rewarding, and everything settles down. All stress leaves. When I'm working with the same skill set in a design project for a project, when I realize that there's absolutely zero joy in it, I think, why am I doing this for this person or this company or whatever? I have to get my head in a place where I'm going to have to do it because I committed to it. It's a 6-week project. We have a huge deadline. We've got a print deadline, whatever. I'm going to make myself enjoy this. I have to deal with that. Or if I work with someone who I don't like them. I don't like their belief system. I don't like how they're treating people. Do I get to say goodbye? I quit. I'm not doing your job. Sometimes I get to do that, but sometimes I'm invested already. And so it's just, when you're such a caring, as you say, empathic person, you don't want to leave people in the lurch. But then we are the ones that I think that pay the price of losing years of peaceful night's sleep, getting stressed, not being happy. And then that unhappiness, I am aware of that with my family. Sometimes I'll have that angst that comes from working with people or with a team or some project that just isn't right. And that angst will come out in other ways in my life. And then I feel guilty. I say, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm trading off pleasing this, this system or this project or whatever it is that I got myself into, and is rubbing off in a negative way on the people that I truly care about that are precious.
Yeah.
And so this is my fault. Let's regroup. Let's fix this. And I think that's what I was dealing with this week, actually, with some things I'm working on now. Is that, you know what? Today I made a decision. I'm going to go talk to Steve and have a podcast and just get out of my headspace, out of this yucky stuff, and regroup. So I just make some decisions. Like the word NO is a good one sometimes.
It's empowering.
Yes.
And it's necessary. I think as caring people as you are, and as emotional people as most artists are, it's easy to get lost in the exchange of ideas, of interactions, of workflow and deadlines and all those things, and sort of lose track of what matters.
Yes.
And that also includes enjoyment of your work, because that state you described when you're just enjoying your art, I think the true masters are the people who go into that flow state when they are commissioned.
Yes.
And
Indeed.
They know how to tell everybody, all right, go away. I am going to need this bubble.
Yes.
And when I come out, whenever it is, then I'm going to come out with your work. And they've true enough to themselves that they know how to communicate that. They know how,
Yes.
from a professional side, letting the client know what to expect, letting
Yes.
the client know how you work.
Yes.
And also having work that you've done that shows the client, whoa, I really hope I get that kind of work
Yes.
out of you.
Yes.
And ultimately, for me as a producer, and we talked about the scaling down of work, everything's
Yes.
on a laptop
Yes.
now. What I've had to learn is I'm an old world producer. So I'm like, I'd produce a Phil Collins record really great.
Yes.
That's my style, like in a big studio with an engineer and a tape op.
Yes.
And session musicians and someone else writing the charts.
Yes.
Because I actually thrive in that role. But the more I start doing all the other things I'm good at, and it starts being too many things, I think your brain runs off in 15 different directions, and you're busy chasing down mic chords when you should be really mulling over whether or not that horn part needs to change
Yes.
because it's clashing with a vocal.
Yes.
Or whether or not you're going to take the time to really connect with the singer before she gets on the
Yes.
mic so
Yes.
that she can get past her own fears.
Yes.
And a big part of my job is psychology. So for me, self-mastery in regard to my own relationship to my work has been essential, because if I don't show up present for my sessions, then that rubs off. The anxiety and the stress.
Yes.
And it rubs off on everybody else. In music, it's a performance-based art.
Absolutely.
So, when you're working with people at the highest level, they have ways to turn it on and off.
Yes.
It's like a performance. It's like theater, right?
Yes.
But most music that's recorded is extremely personal. It's extremely emotional, and you're often, when you're co-writing, you're often working with the other person's heartbreak, and that you're trying to channel it into the choice of words, and you're really working with this large amount of energy.
Yes.
And it could be easy to get lost in it if you don't
Absolutely.
have boundaries, if you don't know what your yes is, and I'm agreeing to engage in this, and I'm going to fully engage in this, and where that ends. I'm going to go home and I'm going to put it aside, and in my case, arrangement ideas come to me in my sleep, so I have to get up in the middle of the night and write them down. So I know that as soon as I'm commissioned on a project, I need to know that that's a part of. It's not just, Steve came into the studio from 10:30 to 1:45, and so that's it's not. It's the moment I'm on a piece, I am working on it around the clock.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so that's a good point, because as a creative person, a lot of the problem solving is done outside the workplace, because you take on the life of a project and now you're responsible for it. And it becomes this whole entity that you're innately, part of. So, yeah, wake up from sleeping, you're dreaming about it, you're driving in the car, you're in the shower. It's like, oh, that would work. That's how I'll solve that. And I think that's great. And of course, if you're working a job and, say you're working by the hour and you put your hours in, or they give you a commission. They say, here's this X amount of money for 2 weeks of work because we want the end result here. We don't bill for that. You don't bill for I'm solving the problem, 2 hours outside of here at the coffee shop. I solved this. Wow, I'm so excited. I got a great solution. So once I get in the studio, I'm going to do that. Or that's the better way for efficiency to get this whole thing done and collaborate. That's the way we operate in this generation. We're not, especially with the new trends of robotics and AI, and we go into this whole world of the future that our children, my grown-up children, your young children are facing. And the humanity of our problem solving is still a creative, mysterious force that we're doing on the odd hours. So there's such a value in that. We don't put a price on that.
Let's talk about when I worked with you. I remember distinctly, I was this young 16-year-old eager kid, and I'm like, oh, let me help you with that. Let me help you, I'll wash the dishes for you. I'll do whatever.
You're awesome, yes.
And I remember distinctly, there was a time when you started washing dishes. And I said, no, you don't have to do that. That's, let me do that. And you were like, no, Steve, this is the time where I clear my head.
I still do that.
This is how I cleanse my mind from all of the things I'm thinking about and just get really present with something that I can feel and touch.
Yes. Yeah, that's really helpful. And you do that too now, I'm sure.
I do. And it's essential. I didn't realize that taught me so much. And
that's good.
I do want to talk about mentorship and how important it is, the little things that you learn from people. I didn't go into art, but I've learned so much from you. I feel like now is the time to look at your other painting.
Okay.
So there's a painting here called Watercolor Woman.
Yes.
And what I like about it is she is floating and you can see her body, but around her body, you see this sort of gold light. And it's like her aura, if you will, like the energy surrounding her body. And then above that, there are these very wispy little white pinkish layers, like a rainbow above her head, and like extra energy that's coming from her legs, and this like very, very top, like this point of light that's maybe 18 inches to 24 inches above her head. And she just looks like she's almost like floating, but almost like coming like a candle, like a flame out of the bottom of the piece.
Well put. I didn't think of any of those things when I was doing this, but yes, this is a very personal image. Yes, I don't know what to say.
That's okay.
It's a young image, by the way, so and it's very spiritual, I guess. It goes into the spirit world of.
For me, I relate to that painting because as I have had to get more in touch with my physicality, I think I was always very head-based.
Yes.
And part of my healing process has been to reconnect to my feelings, but also to reconnect with my body.
Yes.
And as I have done that, the process for me has been learning that my emotions, my energy, my physicality, it does extend beyond my body, just like in the painting.
Yes.
And that it also touches other energies in the room, other people, and interacts and plays, just like light and color interact.
Indeed. Absolutely. Yes, that's a good thing. That's a whole other world. So in terms of mentorship, I think when you are mentoring someone, it's a loving movement, because a true mentorship is you're actually sharing your soulful approach to life itself. And in a way, it's a protective move of caring enough about someone else that you care about their journey and their growth. And seeing, again, true mentorship, I think, is seeing someone else's inner potential, inner soulfulness, the fragile parts of that person, and feeling protective. So for me, that's how it drives. I'm continue to mentor. I have other people in my life that have come forth, recently. And I was like, oh, I remember, you really helped me or mentored. I remember this. It's like, what did I do? I don't really remember it. It's like a blur to me, but it's really grateful to feel that, because I certainly have experienced people mentoring me. There's very few, but they impacted my life forever. And so it's like you pass on something that's part of your soul. It's expansive. Like, so now I've included this other gem as part of who I am. And so there's an imparting going on. And I think in the spiritual world that I think you experienced, and I did for a short while, the word imparting was, used, I think, in a not a good way, because I don't think it was a truthful way. Mm-hmm. It was more like, I'm going to impart my power and personality onto you because you're not enough. And so that, to me, is more of a dark tonality to it, where when something comes from true, unselfish love and the joy of being alive as a human, there's nothing that you gain from it. It's a gift.
Yes.
And so it's a humanity going on through the ages, and as long as we've been around, it's like gifts that are being imparted to more as an expansive awareness and a kindness. And we certainly can go through that, because that is a deep topic.
So one of my favorite questions from another podcast is, what did you have for breakfast?
Well, oddly, I had leftover salad, and it was spinach with various vegetables and olives and feta cheese, and I added salmon, and that was about 11 because I don't eat early.
Yeah.
I have to get up and have my coffee, fresh ground, strong coffee, go for a walk. When I spoke to you this morning, I was walking down the alley with my cup of coffee and just looking at the light on the trees, and then you surprised me with the text. And it's like, okay. Then I did not eat for 3 hours.
You have that in common with Malcolm Gladwell and a lot of other guests on some of the podcasts I listen to about habits of highly successful people.
Yes.
Something about that morning coffee, but not eating very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of Malcolm, the last thing I heard from him a few days ago was that in terms of trusting people, that as human beings, he mentioned that we seem to have a default trust in us. And so therefore we actually believe people even when we don't understand that people may not be sincere. We always inherently think they are sincere, though they may not be. So that was a thought from Malcolm.
Wow. So I'm going to go there for a very, very shallow moment so that we can get it out of the way. You and I know each other from a traumatic religious experience.
Yes.
And the reason I would say it was traumatic and harmful was because it was very controlling.
Yes.
And so I think just to say that, since that's where we were flowing.
Yes.
Yeah. And it will color the rest of the conversation. So I want to get that out and say what we need to say about that, and then just.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. One can lose a decade of life through people's intervention in a damaging way.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the nature that we've been talking about of being empathic and here to share joy with people and to give and to serve, we become very vulnerable to that other group of people that could be any faction, but are users.
Yes.
That can really pretty much suck you dry and not care. And so learning the toughness, getting that extra skin, as we talked about, as a sensitive, creative person, there's a certain, it's a journey to learn how to be protective.
Well, I think people find that as creatives all walks, because having a marketable skill that people want,
well put,
opens you up to people who would like to use you like a paintbrush or use you like a commodity.
Yes, and make them money.
Yes. So I think that a lot of people can relate to that.
Definitely. Absolutely. So yes, when you have a marketable skill, and if you have that, you don't think about it in that way. You just think, oh, I'm good at this. I enjoy doing it. Let me share what I do.
Yes.
And let me offer it to others. And if it helps them, that'd be really great. And so that's the purity we're coming from. But then when someone sees that I can use that person to make me look better or to make me money or for my ideas and not care.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the interesting thing about people in our lives who show us something is there's an easy tendency to idolize people and put them on a pedestal. And so I feel like anyone who has something to teach you, that has information for you, also should have something to learn.
Yes.
And it should be a two-way relationship. Any good mentoree relationship has a give and take. There is a benefit that goes two ways. And it's not just a one-way street of guru and devotee.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, Steve. Really good.
I think that's what needed to be said in the context
I think so. It's like, thank you.
Of mentorship.
We want to freshen it up now. Let's just we'll hose it all down there.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. My interview with award-winning designer Wendy Vanguard continues in the second half. You can connect with us and find out more about what we learn from creatives in every art form at thelanguageofcreativity.com.
Tell me more about your children.
Wonderful. Okay, so I have 3. They're grown up. The youngest, Josh, is 23, a musician, very creative drummer, and also he's just good at many different things as he's discovering his path. And my next one, Jason, is some age in the 30s. I'm so proud of him. I'm proud of all of my kids, and I have been a role of mentorship to them, not just being a mom, but as a working parent in creative fields. It's automatically mentoring them, and they've grown up in a creative household, so they all tend to be creative on the path. And Jason has become a father as well, and daughter-in-law is also creative and wonderful. And his path was through music, another creative music, and through science and physics, and now a web developer or programmer that is an engineer. We're getting to work remote. What a dream. And raise his daughter. And also pursue his personal music and his own inventions in the world. And the oldest, as you know well, Asia, you helped drive those kids around
yes,
when they were
did.
younger. And as a mom with 2 beautiful daughters and a wonderful husband, and she's also an entrepreneur and discovered her creativity and success later as having been a mother early in her young years, and now as a middle-aged, wonderful, beautiful woman, she's discovering her entrepreneurship in design and branding. And I'm so proud of all of these amazing people that Mitch and I have raised together somehow, in spite of all the interventions of the world and things that happen. And as a creative husband, my husband's a photographer, and I married him as a young photographer. Then we abandoned that and being in the world of design and producing television and different kinds of things. He lost his way in terms of staying true to his art. He didn't have time. He was busy making money and supporting the family and all that entails, as you know well. And it wasn't until 15 years ago, 10, I don't remember, it was like, wow, you need to start shooting again, because there was no joy. the joy of being alive and being a productive person was missing.
Right.
And there was, which affected the relationship and being the whole thing. It's like, wow, where did that go? And he picked it up and has been able to somehow revisit the joy of his art and his passion, and had that going until now. He's well known around the world, and his black and white photography as a true landscape artist and a storm chaser, all these things, he reliving that, and he's done really well with that. I'm so proud of him, and for the kids to watch their dad rediscover his passion as a very much inspiration for them to follow their own dreams. And I felt along the way a little left behind because I was doing all the mothering and the raising and the da-da-da and working. And so my personal path was, wait a minute, it's my turn,
Yes.
That was always underlying there. I was like, wait, but my adult children are inspiring to me because in mentoring their paths and imparting from both Mitch and I, you've got to follow your dream and you've got to follow what's in your soul to have happiness in life. Nothing else really matters. And having that support for that vision, I hope they receive that and know that each finds their way and that's gratifying to them. And as I would wish for you as well, Steve.
Yeah. And it's interesting because some of the interviews where I've talked to people who are also mothers, I have become acutely aware of the fact that it's different for a man who's chasing his artistic career and the money and all those things versus a mother who is doing the same thing. And I knew you at a time where you had a young child and 2 middle-sized children.
Yes.
And you were running a full-time, we used to have dinner at 2 a.m. You'd get Froman's Deli and bring food because you said if we don't have food, our brains won't work.
Right.
And here you are in the middle of the night, and then first thing in the morning, you're like, hey, Steve, I need you to pick up my kids and take them to school because we're back at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. and we were just up till 3 or 4 doing a deadline.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have 2 kids now, and I can't do the math on how you even did it.
Yeah, I think that's just common for all mothers, working mothers especially. It's just automatic. It's just an automatic thing. We don't really. Did you get any sleep when you had your firstborn? No one sleeps. You don't sleep for a while. Well, you don't really sleep forever after that, I think, and you get used to it, and it's just. You just do it, But I think in terms of having, I have a neighbor, Jo Perry. She's a writer, and her husband's a writer, very successful, and she has 2 children. And just as a neighbor, where we walk dogs together and we be able to collaborate on a few projects, watching her pick up a pen or type whatever she did, she started writing her own novels about 3 years ago because she never had time, and she finally decided, I just have to do it. And so somehow she's got her 4th book coming out. And I so respect, our discussion was always like, wow, we're dealing with so much with the family all the time. Even grown children, they require more.
Yes.
More. It's like multiplies. They multiply and the needs multiply and the conversations multiply. And it's like, wait, I thought I'd have time. Everyone would be, self-sufficient and happy. And I just me and my book or me and my art. No, that doesn't happen. Uh-huh. So it's the perseverance of like, you know what? I'm never going to feel good about myself if I don't do it.
Yeah.
And so it is definitely a challenge for women. And I don't think it's different for men, actually. It's just different. It's a different challenge. Like your challenge right now to try to make your business thrive, and you're inventing something. You're doing something from scratch.
True.
And so, and you're being a great father, like so involved in your, driving them around. Like, yeah, you do so much, right?
Well, and trying to be present, trying not to take work home, trying to actually detach from the phone calls and the emails and all the things that need doing. But ultimately, when you look back at the end of your life, will you really wish you had answered that email faster? Or will you want to play with your son or daughter on the floor?
That's the most valuable thing to bring up because, on a daily basis, when you go to bed at night, do you feel good about what your day was? Did you feel good because you finished a project or because you had harmony in the house? And, that's just a very simple question. It's like, is it going to really matter if I answer that email?
Well, I feel like the two things are always in tension too, because, if I were to quit music and stop making art, I don't think I would be living the life that I'm here to live either.
No, you wouldn't be.
So I feel like those two things are constantly in tension of how to be authentic and how to give that time to yourself, but then also to be present and there when you are there, and how do you make those decisions?
Okay, let's go to the way. Let's go to the Tao. Okay, so you talked about Alan Watts and how you're visiting that world, and as are my children, and I was a Tai Chi woman, a martial artist, but Tai Chi was part of my early life. It kept me going from my first decade of my 20s in the mysterious world of LA. And so the conflict of that precious, simple thinking, there is always the push and the pull. There's always the tension of, do I answer the email or do I play with my child? And so in a way, that's saying that's the balance of life.
Right.
It's going to be like that. And if you go back to the early writings of the Tao Te Ching and the early things like that, it's just that's some community of humanity was passing on this wisdom because they were experiencing it in whatever level, form, without iPhones, without this. Mm-hmm. They were experiencing the same tension of daily choices. And certainly, as you're saying, the current state we are now of the technology and the future, the pace that we're under, the fact that our children are growing up with a tablet right there in front of them, the streaming, everything, it's going to even get more so like that. Yet we're just still simple people. And you said we don't think we're keeping pace, that our brains, of human brains, aren't keeping pace with what's happening in terms of this. We should address that.
Well, absolutely, because I think that's why spirituality or mindfulness, even if you're not into spirituality, is extremely important.
Yes.
Meaning making and reflection and understanding these ancient guiding principles that helped humanity to find its way.
Yes.
Is, I think, why these stories are so timeless. It's why people still read the Tao Te Ching. It's why people still relate to the Bible. It's why people read the Iliad and the Odyssey so many years later, because they're going through some of the same archetypes and the same experiences that we do.
Yes.
But we have cars and airplanes and computers and telephones and
but we still feel hurt when someone says something mean to us, or we still feel guilty if we say something mean to someone else, or if our child falls down and scrapes their knees, we have the impact of, oh my gosh. So we can't get away from that.
You can't get away from your humanity, humanity. And you also, I think our brains are not programmed to be on all the time. There's something important, and this is really important for any artist to hear. There's something essential about downtime.
Yes.
And
indeed.
play and experimentation and novelty. So if you're always on, if you're always consuming, if you're always breathing in, you're never going to breathe out.
Correct. That's true.
And
Absolutely.
Life has a rhythm and a flow. And I think that the artists who get more in tune with their bodies and more in tune with nature, more in tune with the natural flow and cycles of things, realize I will most likely be here tomorrow. And we could all die at any moment, but so far that hasn't happened. So, there is always tomorrow. And I was working on a record, and I was trying to schedule this session with a bass player, and we've been working on this record for a long time. And he's like, well, does tomorrow work? No, well, I got this thing, I can move it around. How about Friday? Okay, well, yeah, Friday's okay if I do this and this and this. And we're both kind of really tense about it, but we wanted to make it work because we both wanted to get this thing done. We were going to enjoy working together. And finally I said, can we just do next week? He's like, oh, that would be so much better. And I'm like, you know what I just realized? We're not driving ambulances. We're making art. So no matter how important this may seem and how urgent it purports to be, ultimately, if we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong.
Yes. And we need to have those reminders of that like every hour practically when you're the nature of a hardworking,
Yes.
driven person, which we are, and which many artists and creative people are. There's just that driving force. So how do we... It's a real challenge to remember those.
It's the drive to be great.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Great. So...
Well, so you and I are both like helper with perfectionist.
Yes.
I think that's one thing you and I have very much in common.
I think we do. But also let's talk about the greatness, because one thing that I read in Andy Hahn's little blog, who's a young man who I hired and a great designer now who I saw recently, and he's a wonderful artist and designer and family man and person. And he had his little blog about his path and how in the early years, fame and fortune, or the idea of like peer approval, and like you wanted to be the best designer, and so that more for others to prove yourself in a way was very important. It was just part of your nature then. And then in later years, it's like, that's not so important anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that terms of greatness or approval is a different factor of being an artist or a musician, because we're still thinking we're doing it for somebody. Are they going to like it? And certainly growing up as a young person, certainly my granddaughter's 11 and 8, and the new one is 8 months. They want people to know that they're doing a good thing. Like, did you hey, did you see me do that? Did you see me ride the horse? Did you see me play? I can jump now, It's like, look, Minnie. They call me Minnie. Look. And so it's just part of our nature. We want that approval. So at what point in your mature life do you want your own approval?
Right. Because I think that defines almost every musician I've ever met.
Yes.
Like that idea of look at me. And to me, it's like, how much of that is us trying to heal our childhood? Look at me, in a way. It's like, I'm going to go be on a stage and I'm going to play so everyone hears I'm going to be awesome, and everyone's going to like fall down and go, we're not worthy.
A huge fan base.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I think there's a point where you just have to say, it doesn't matter who hears this or sees this. I have to make this. And there's a genuine quality.
Yes, there is.
To that kind of work.
And it brings peace, I think, when you just decide, this meets my level of perfection. It's good enough for me. It's pleasing me. I feel good about this. And leave it there.
So let's talk about the woman in her studio. The young woman.
Oh, yeah.
Sitting on the couch, or is it
with
bed?
The ironing board in the closet full of things. And yeah.
And there's an easel, and there's light coming through the window past the girl. She's a girl. She doesn't look like a woman
yet. A young
yet.
woman, almost a woman.
And she's got her hand like playing with the light, and the hand looks like it's going to cast some sort of light onto the easel. And she's just there by herself in the nude, just...
Yep, on the bed. I did a lot of nude stuff when I was younger because I thought that's part of my art. That was just part of an artist. You do the body... The figure of a body is so beautiful to me, and it's part of the landscape. And so in that was a dream. I illustrated a dream, and I rarely did that in my life, but I remember it pretty vividly because in a room, you have an enclosed space, and all the elements in the room are reflective of who you are, your life, or what's happening in your life. Your child, definitely from a childhood. So the light and the drawing board, that was a drawing easel that my dad built for me when I was probably 7 or 8. So I always was drawing, and he saw that and he thought, well, I'm going to build you this little thing. I kept that up until maybe 20 years ago, until it pretty much disintegrated, but it was wood. But that was in my dream because that was a piece of furniture that was my friend in a way, getting through adolescence.
Yeah.
I had my little drawings on there, and it was my place to go to visualize things, because as a sensitive child, and also probably I was a little more introverted, even though I didn't appear that, because I could be a friendly hostess, but the inner self was a quiet place. And so that drawing board represented, a lot of my childhood and what kept me alive, basically. And the ironing board and all the clothes and all that stuff in this little tiny room was like, well, that's also part of life. And that was not a skill set I had, but my mother, dear woman, that was part of her life. She thought that was part of her duty as a mother, because her role as a mother was very traditional, and she didn't work. Her whole life was around making clothes for me and making the house clean, and there was a lot of sadness in that for me, because I knew in her, she was a very creative, spunky woman, but life dealt her a path that was to be frightened of the world, because my father had, she was widowed young. My father died in a plane crash as a pilot in the French Alps. It's kind of a romantic saga. And so that really affected her for the rest of her life. It stunted her spunky adventure person that she was on the inside. And so there was a sadness in there for me to see a woman kind of constrained to a path that society gave her. And so that really affected me deeply. And she was such a creative person. And I think that if I had been a more mature young woman in my relationship with her, I could have maybe encouraged her more to be free of that. Those efforts failed because, again, it was the society we were in at the time, and things have changed greatly since then, because after that is when a lot of the feminist movement came aboard, and there was a huge movement in Los Angeles. And so I saw she was right in the cusp of that. So that was a sad dream.
Yeah.
But the hope in it was that I had the freedom to express myself as an artist without restraint.
Yeah.
That freedom you said about art is freedom. And so in my blatant nakedness in that little image, and embracing the fact that I did have a path because I had a drawing board, it was my escape into life, and coming out of that tight, claustrophobic room. And thus the next illustration of the woman watercolor, which was years later, that was like, okay, I can move off forward with this. I'm free of some of those restraints because society has opened up a place that's safer for me to be that.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of, history there that my granddaughters being born now are coming into a new world where there's no gender specific thing. They have complete, you can be whoever you are. There's, at least here in our culture in Los Angeles and California, okay, maybe going somewhere else. You don't want to go to certain other states right now. But
not Iowa yet. But.
No, not yet. And so it's such a, we're in a time of history that's transformative.
And I want to react to something that you said when you said your father had passed away early in life.
Yes.
And you said he made you that easel.
No, I had two fathers. So my birth father, Ollie Olmsted, Orville Olmsted from Manitoba, Canada. Yes, he passed away at 28 on November 13th, something rather early there. And so my mom was widowed, and she, by happenstance, met a man who was from Holland, Jan Johannes van Wingard, and who became John Vanguard. He was emigrating to America through Montreal, because that's what you did back then after living for 7 years in Hong Kong. You and I
share a family Montreal connection, too.
Okay, cool. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, she married this man that came into her life, met her on a bus right in Montreal, and he followed her. He thought, she's a lovely woman. He found out she had 2 children. He said, well, that's not okay. We need to get married, and I'm going to bring you to America. So he pulled her from her whole Irish Protestant little tiny community of family and brought her all the way to California. And he being an international traveler and spoke many languages and very Dutch, which is a certain personality.
Yes.
So basically, he's the father that came and brought us to the neighborhood of Northern California as a good place to raise a family. Having been everywhere in the world, he thought that was good. And of course, that is a wonderful place. However, I came down here instead. but he was the one that promoted my art and saw value in that. And he also promoted my being completely independent and able to survive anything, as he was a survivor of World War II as a young man escaping Holland and joining the RAF and being a pilot. He survived. And so he was very tough and wanted his children to be as strong and able to survive. The difficult part was I became so strong and independent, we battled constantly. There was debates. I debated him constantly. And so his sadness was that I became so strong and independent that he could no longer make sure I was safe and control my outcome.
Wow.
So there was conflict there, but I totally admire and respect him. The part that was difficult was that keeping my mom in a traditional role was part of him protecting her because she was a fragile woman, to the point where he didn't make her strong and feel independent, but he kept her cloistered in his love and care for her. That, for me, is the backfiring. It's like that's the imbalance that we all have those things in our family history.
So that was the cold chills. And when I was listening to you talk about the painting, what I realized was here in the foreground, almost as if you're composing a film shot with two actors.
Yes.
In the foreground, almost so in the foreground you don't notice it, here's the ironing board.
Yes.
And then in the focus is this easel.
Yes.
And the two are actually two characters.
Yes.
In the painting.
Yes, indeed. They are. Yeah.
And there you are sitting, just playing with the light and casting it on the
And
easel.
light is so important because light comes into the darkness. And if you notice, one of the other paintings I sent you is called Light Opening. And so that little painting was, I hadn't painted in 10 years. And because of all the things that happened to us that we both experienced.
Yes.
And so personal art went by the wayside, and surviving, protecting the family became priority. And I thought I have to go back to painting to get back myself, basically. And that was the first thing I painted, and it was just a dark painting. It was like being in a cave and seeing light, because I had another dream, and I was like coming out of a dark cave, and you just see, after your journey, like, I see the light. Because the cave was so dark for so long for me. For probably 10 years, I was in a dark, empty place of just trying to survive. It's like being in a war.
It's a lot like that.
And so I was paralyzed within that for so long in order to just go through the motions of how do I maintain protecting those I care for. And that took a lot of energy and zapped my physically also. And so that painting was my first, wow, I got a little bit of the joy back and I felt alive again. And it's so, I mean, who would ever like this, an abstract little moment? For me, it's very powerful and meaningful.
I can feel it when I look at your work. And that's what's interesting to me is your style is, I guess you would call it impressionistic.
Yes.
When you're doing those kind of things. But that's what's so neat about the impressionistic paintings is that it's more about the feeling, and you can't get lost in the details because the details are almost like diffuse.
That is such a good point, because I had someone look at my work a couple of years ago. I said, I want to have you just, is it worth me even doing anything? And when he came and looked at my work, he said, you're a really good painter. You're really good, but that's not important. This one over here is showing you. It's not perfect, but it's emotional. And so that's you. And that stuck with me. And then when Josh was going, he's in music production right now at UCLA Extension. He's learning this because he's doing all this stuff. He said he was learning about analog versus digital. And there was a whole discussion about that, about the imperfection of recorded music back in the day when it was, just recording in the live arena or just, without the digital mixing and MIDI.
Recording to 2 tracks maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just the difference of like going through the chords, analog to this, then it becomes digital over here through this. And he was explaining to me in a very simplistic way, thank goodness, that there was some essence there is a difference. And so the same thing with, I can draw realistically, I can paint, I can do everything, but that's a skill. Anyone can learn the skill of that.
Right.
But the emotion is what's valuable. However, the little birdie on my shoulder that's saying, hey, but it's not good enough because you're a professional artist, so it should be crisp and clear and realistic and show your skill set. That's what's important
Hard
because
edge.
You're marketing, right? Exactly. Yes. As opposed to it can be personal expression. It doesn't have to be a good, finished, slick thing. And so I think the same thing with music. It's going to be slick and well tracked and produced, but look, where's the emotion? Sometimes the rawness of it is what people need.
I was listening to Damien Rice on the way here, and I was bowled over. It's just what he does with an acoustic guitar, his voice, the story, and a cello.
Yeah.
And then when the female collaborator comes in, you don't know if they're involved or not. Like, there's so much charge to the music. And I think a lot of times it's about what's not being said.
Yes.
And it's about what's being conveyed between the information. So in the case of analog signal, there's not a computer making a choice between on or off or light or dark. It's a gradient. And a lot of the noise that you get, just like in film with your husband work, the noise helps to even it out.
Yes.
In a digital recording, there's a certain part of the audible spectrum that is just cut out because you can't hear it. Your ears don't go that high. Why would you record it?
Yes.
But it's like sometimes I think the interplay between the colors and what that color's conveying and the shapes and the motion that's implied. I mean, everybody can see implied motion, but it's not really there.
Yes.
And so I think that's the artist's job, is to take a medium and then learn how to translate a whole experience, like from 3D and time into something flat and canvasy, using oil and pigment. How do you even do that? Like, it's alchemy. It's magic.
It is. It's so much fun. Yeah. So we're enjoying this, right? We're enjoying our art and music. We're back to the enjoyment aspect of the joy of it. And
well, I want to ask you something. So going back a little bit to when you said you had a 10-year period where you just had to protect your family and you just had to come back and you couldn't make art. Did you experience any kind of like post-traumatic stress?
Oh, yeah, I did. I experienced for a long time. It took 3 years to process, to learn, research, and find out what the triggers were and find out, first of all, why the heck I got myself in that position in the first place. What was it about me that failed?
Right.
What was it I failed? And that hurt others. My failure affected people I loved. And so where was my courage in that moment? Where was my common sense? Where was my pragmatism? Where was my survival set? And where was I damaged that I wasn't strong enough? So certainly dealing with that aspect of guilt and shame, it was really difficult. And then how does this not happen again, and how do I protect others from this process? And certainly it took me 3 years of daily, weekly work to unwind from that, to get strong again, to build myself up, to hear my inner self again. Because my inner self never left. It was just covered up.
Yeah.
But it did not go away. I did not lose my soul. And why I didn't, and after 3 years, I was able to process through dreams, actually. I had finally one dream where the clarity of what the confusion was played out in a dream. And I woke up in the morning and go, wow, that's all that was? And it just brought clarity. And I was able to wow, okay, so I was deceived. And now the deception is gone.
Yes. And
the fact that a human being can be deceived with that, again, Malcolm Gladwell's comment on we have an inherent default trust nature.
Yeah.
That my ability to be deceived was expressed to me by a doctor. You didn't have, Wendy, you did not have in you, there's no thought that you could imagine that anyone would actually do something damaging, that they would actually do that, because you would never do that. It's not in you to fathom how
It's
someone
not
could
in
do
the
that.
realm of calculable possibilities.
No, it doesn't. There's nothing in my nature. I would never could imagine it. So I could never imagine that someone was really doing that. They must be confused, or they must need help, or
Right.
maybe I can, show them it's really okay here. So I put a lot of effort and passion into trying to help someone be nice and good,
Yeah.
or see the damage, but they were twisted, and so coming out of that darkness and the deception, I had to recognize that, I may not get it, I may not understand it, but it is here in the world. And there are human beings that are like that. And certainly I had to study a lot about sociopaths and that whole world of behavior that's not good behavior.
Predatory.
Predatory, thank you. And I did, because I'm a researcher, I like to know the facts. And so I had every book and novel and whatever. I learned all about it, and I got, wow, no, I would never have thought about that. And I shared that with my people I cared about. Hey, you need to read this. You need to know about this. Here's a sociopath next door. Here's all this stuff. Here's the narcissistic behavior. All these things to be warning signs, because we don't anticipate that someone would ever be like that. They seem so genuine.
Well, and they prey on people who are sensitive, because
Yes.
we're kind and we're unassuming, and we
Yes.
have a big target on our backs when it comes to people who are abusers.
So true. I got a call this morning, by the way, early this morning. I got a call on my cell phone. It was like an 888 number, and the message on the phone said, this is Social Security. We wanted to alert you that your Social Security number has been maybe fraudulent in the southern part of Texas, and
My sister called me the other day and said, I got this call and my Social Security number was used in Texas. Is that fake? So
yes, and so
yes,
anyway,
it's fake.
And so it said press 1 to speak to a representative. So I pressed 1, and I thought, and this voice came. I said, "How do I know your Social Security?" Click. They hung up. So it's like, wow, they're preying on people out of a fear, and I think a lot of the predatory behavior comes from fear-based, like, if you don't do this. And in the religious sense, a lot of what I think we experienced, like, if you don't do this, so-and-so will be mad, or you will...
you will go to hell.
You will go to hell or whatever, but I don't believe in
talk
hell.
about great marketing.
Yeah.
Create a need and offer the solution.
Yes, indeed.
I might edit that part out. That's a little too
heavy.
Yeah. But
yeah, we get it. So with the dark decade that I went through and the recovery process, that's a lot of years of my life that could have been spent doing enriching things and getting stronger. But our paths are what they are. Mm-hmm. And the good news is that for me and my family, we couldn't have been restored in a better way. There couldn't have been more like learning process, or my kids to see what looked like darkness and shambles regrowth into like a beautiful entity that they're part of. And they're so astonished that people can recover from things and become better and learn and become more compassionate. And so that's the lesson for them, and I'm very proud of that.
Yes. Well, and that's a terrific way to reframe what was an otherwise horrific experience for your family.
Yes.
And for me, I studied cults in college once I left that group. And
yes, and that
helped me out a lot.
A deep training, absolutely.
Understanding mind control and new religious movements, and how various groups, it doesn't have to be religious, but how they co-opt human psychology.
Yes.
And will, basically pretend to help you, but really they're using you for money and for work and for, all these different things. I mean, people are going through this all over the world.
They are.
In other governments and things like that,
and the
too.
methodology for that, as I'm sure you studied, was that it's how to wear you down with a training process and wear you down with service, and so that you have no sleep, you lose contact with you're separated from your family, or separated from those that have common sense.
Uh-huh.
You're, almost like a lion does when he's chasing a herd of gazelles.
Right.
They want to separate the weak one, and then it's separated, and now it's like weaker and doesn't have the pack around it to protect it, and then the lions can come and grab that one. So the same methodology, it started with like Mao's, the early communism. Yeah, that was their methodology. They separated you, and they defamed your family or your creative culture, the whole history of China. They defamed the artwork and destroyed it, and you would, they'd wear you down so you were exhausted, and you had no other choice but to like acclimate to their way. And I think that same methodology was going with a lot of the cults here in America.
Yes.
And as you're right, they're not all religious. But if you go back to the Tao, if you go back to that early training of the wisdom that came from it, there was no cult with that. There was no leader.
Right.
There was no, you have to follow this or do it this way.
Lao
There was
Tzu
none
meant
of that.
old man.
Yes.
And nobody knows if he really existed.
Right.
No one knows who wrote it.
Exactly. So I think that's like a non-cult wisdom, where some of the religions that we get become cultish because they want to idolize one
I think
them.
it starts off as a non-cult and almost every time becomes some I mean, I've heard that about Taoism once it gets a little bit more
well, because
down
human
the
beings
road.
take it out. Like
Yeah.
even Alan Watts became a little bit cultish towards the end of his life. He didn't, there are aspects of that when that was being merchandised.
Yeah.
It became, well, I will teach you how you can do this way. Well, there was no teacher. It was like the wisdom.
Yeah.
We don't need a teacher.
Sometimes it becomes a cult of personality too. It's not always intended to
That's true.
harm people. Sometimes it's
Yes.
people who need a leader and they need someone to follow, and they will almost throw themselves at a celebrity or at a politician or whatever, and it's maybe not even the attention of whatever
That's a
leader
really good
group.
point. Of
People
course.
who are charismatic and have a lot of personality are people that humans want to emulate.
Exactly.
And
That's
so
really
if
good.
you don't have that sense inside of I am worthy, I am unique and special and bring my own gifts to the world as I am, they're unique and they're the only things that I can bring, you might see someone else and want to become them.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the thing about idols and mentors too. I hear this saying in music that says, never meet your idols.
Really?
Because, you're bound to be disappointed.
That's, yeah, okay.
You find out they're an asshole, right? Or, in some cases.
True. Mhm.
And, I think that's one of the things that my grandmother always said, he puts his pants on just like everybody else.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And, the funny thing is we do get starstruck, and there is something about celebrity that's very powerful in our culture. And for me, I think growing up around celebrities was one of the few healthy things about my upbringing, because I understood, oh, here's another human being who's been put in this role where everybody looks up to them,
Yes.
and they now have to live up to that.
Yes.
Otherwise, they are scrutinized and lambasted.
Yes.
And it's so lonely and so sad.
Yes.
And how do you have real friends? How do you have anyone who's really close to you? Unless you're the narcissist who's eating it all up for breakfast and saying, yeah, worship me, I'm the greatest. I think that's where the narcissist thing and the sociopath gets its
Yes.
ego stroked.
Yes.
And you do see some of that in music. I think music more than many places, but yeah,
because
sometimes
it's a performing art.
Yeah.
You're sharing performance, which is a wonderful thing to share, but you're right, it can get the idolatry, the celebrity.
yeah.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
don't think that ego is not as big a role as it was when I think there was a lot in my growing up culture in popular music and film where there was just so much money and so much excess that you could be an egotistical person. I've heard this about people who work in production
Yes.
on some role like art director or things. Like you could be this big ego and abuse people and be a jerk, and people would put up with it because, well, he's got money and he's paying the bills, and I'm working with celebrities and blah blah blah. In today's culture, a lot of that stuff is ending.
We're so grateful for that.
Yes.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you more about your work with feminism.
Uh-huh.
You have a whole nother series of paintings that you were wanting to describe.
I do, and I didn't really call it feminism back then during the decade of the 70s and the early 80s. Mostly this mid-70s, I guess, is when in Los Angeles a lot of that was coming about. And there was the women's building downtown was an arts building. So there were a lot of women artists in Los Angeles that were doing community, they have meet for, to just talk about their art. And it was a safe place for women to kind of come out of the closets, basically, to say, I am an artist and it's okay. And I'm just doing this gentle thing I'm doing. And then there was, but I was such quiet, social anxiety person. And it was very hard for me to get out into a group setting because I didn't share.
Yeah.
It was hard for me, always was and still is. So I just was in the background watching and being aware of the changes and movement. And being a woman in the industry when I was in Los Angeles in my 20s, I didn't have, being raised by the Dutch men, it didn't faze me. Like there was nothing I couldn't do.
Right.
And so I came with that. I came to LA by myself. I was 18. I navigated the territory, and it was like really, what an adventure. I was so excited. I could do art. I could live my own life. And so it never occurred to me that I was a short young woman in the industry. It's like I got work. I never had a lack of work, just as because they'd see my work. They go, who did that? Oh, Wendy, so-and-so. Let's call her to do this. So I had a succession of projects that got amplified and bigger. So I never doubted. I never thought about as a woman, I don't get work. Now, being a woman in the industry as a young woman, the whole Me Too movement, it's that's the way it was.
Yes.
I had half of the people I worked with were pretty horrible on that aspect. It was kind of cheesy and sleazy. And the other half were respectful and were, it was just a combination. So that was just a non-issue. It was like, you just avoid that, okay?
Right. You just know that that's the environment.
That's the environment.
You plan for it.
Of Hollywood and in the industry for that. Yeah, it was okay. So, it's like, I don't want to waste time thinking about that.
Yeah.
Nothing stopped me in terms of my career of being really good at what I did and being, just because I tried to do good work. It wasn't like I was trying to advertise or anything. It's just if you did good work, you got work.
Now, is that because you were in art?
Yeah.
Is the art field more progressive and ahead of its time in that regard?
That's a good question. I think it probably at that era was beginning to be like that. There were more women designers, and it was much more open because it was a very tight, small community in the world.
Yeah.
It's Los Angeles, and it is media broadcast design. It's television, okay?
Right.
Yes, it was definitely, we're all talking about making a good product and doing good work. So you're right.
Yeah, and trying to push society forward.
Yes. But on the aspect of being a woman artist and telling the pain of being a woman in certain environments, for instance, the whole abortion era, when in 1973, when Roe versus whatever it was, suddenly abortion was legal in California. One Russian woman had told me when she was the parent of one of my boyfriends at the time, and she was married to a Russian pianist, who's famous in Russia, and they ended up in Shanghai because they had to escape. They were Jewish, had to escape the whole nightmare during the World War II. And so she lived in Japan and Shanghai, and she was a very worldly woman. And so for her, she said her birth control was abortion. So back then, this is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Her experience as a European cultural woman who was well respected and everything in that world, that was just what you did. Japan and China, that was what you did.
Yeah.
That was no, I had that's just a birth control. That's what we did. It's like, and so then it was like part of that era when the doctors, if you were pregnant, for instance, the doctor would recommend, just go here. You're too young. I mean, that was just that era. So I thought that was and plus in my art world, a lot of homosexuality was just part of my world because all the artists and designers I was with in the community in Hollywood, West Hollywood, they were all my colleagues. And so then AIDS came about and the whole sexual revolution and the whole thing was happening intensely at that time. You weren't around then, but that affected your personal journey. And you saw people around you dying or going through, abortions and having to have the aftermath of that. And it was just part of the way it was. There was no discussion. There was no judgment. It was just how it was. And so I did a series of paintings based on that. But they're very tiny little watercolors. And so I had those in my little hidden portfolio that reemerged last year when I was going through my closets and pulling things out and organizing should I throw this out? Should I keep it? And I came upon those and I thought, oh my gosh, that's really heavy. That was And so now with the current administration, we're here in America and all the discussion and all the fact that now the children that my grandchildren are coming into this world where everything is different. And you don't, they're much more abstinent in terms of they don't just play around. They're feeling like they need to protect themselves. And they have a whole other aspect of fear and protection of how do we navigate this community now as a human being who is, a woman or a man or whatever else you might be. And in terms of expression in our culture, media and art, well, as artists, we always express what we see.
Yeah.
We do. And I think
we can't not.
You can't not. And so, so I thought, well, I'm just going to keep this private. But I thought, why should I keep this private? I had thoughts and experience about this. Let me share this.
Would you describe what were you painting?
They're just simple expressionist watercolors, 8.5 by 11, a series of them. They're just more like coming out of your mind thoughts. So one would be a silhouette with a red gash in the abdomen.
Ooh.
So things like that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just girl stuff. Yeah.
So kind of like dealing with the reality on like a non-moral level of
but it's emotional because
physical.
But without any thought, like, is this good or bad?
Right.
It's just like, this is what it is. Here's experiences. And so it's a visualization of that era. Yep.
Well, it's funny how art like that reemerges from time to time.
It does. And I think when you look back at decades, if you're as old as I am, and I'm sure you have some decades to look back at now, so it's helpful to see, at least you have some distance from the early decades and you have perspective. And so you evaluate like, well, that was an important time and that was real, that happened to me. That's over. But what little wisdom truths do I have from that? What can I share that's okay to share?
Yeah. Well, it's funny how issues like that reemerge as well in society and in personal work as well. I noticed that you brought flyer design, a brochure, a book. Is it that you're working on there?
No, well, what I brought here was my neighbor Jo Perry, who's the writer that started actually writing she writes prose, but she's very socially conscientious and aware of events like 9/11 when that happened, or Anne Frank, that, those kind of things she was really moved by that. And as an writer, she wanted to like, what can I do? And so we decided to collaborate on a book, a just simple prose poem she wrote about 9/11, which was the tree with 3 lives. So there was this little pear tree that was in the Twin Towers at the base in the little plaza. Nothing special, just a type of tree that was a good landscape thing that survived the different weathers. And it had been almost destroyed when the towers fell. And so she focused on the tree, that the limbs survived, and someone had the heart to take that tree to Long Island and revive it. And so that tree blew, and that was, again, ultimately planted back in the new building, the new tower. So,
wow.
So that was really heavy because that time really impacted me. And we know that was the anniversary of 18 years, like 2 days ago, of 9/11. And you were very young.
I was not, actually. I had just gotten out of college.
Okay.
And so I remember vividly the day the towers fell.
Yes. And so that, for me, life changed because we as a generation we didn't experience World War II or the atomic bomb. Again, that's another fascination. One of the paintings I was showing, it was my
or
Power
Pearl
series.
Harbor. Yeah.
Correct. So we weren't around for that. And so it's like, well, this is horrible things happen in our history, and this is one of them, and it's happened right here. And so, of course. And so, meanwhile, Jo wrote this prose poem, and she said, I want you to illustrate it. And so I thought, well, that'd be really hard to do because, first of all, that's really sad and horrible. And so I decided if I was going to do it as an illustrator, I would do it as an abstraction. And so it was really, I spent, again, that was probably another dark year of having to do some research, and her prose poem was beautiful. It's an uplifting thing. It's not down. She's a beautiful writer, and she's a great writer. And so then taking, like, how can I match that and make it not depressing?
Right.
It is depressing every day. So
you still have to metabolize it
Yes.
in order to do that.
And so I really worked hard at it. So I came up with some illustrations, drawings, and she agreed, yeah, this is good. I like it. It's not, it's not traditional.
Yeah.
And so it's very, again, expressionist. And we wanted to just donate it to the museum there or something. And at the same time, somebody came out with a book that said The Tree with Three Lives, but it was really poorly illustrated. It was a literal thing. It didn't talk about, it didn't tell it in a way that was enriching. And for me, it was like a mediocre expression. So that happened at the same time we were doing, because our publisher or our agent that we had was a wonderful elderly gentleman that had been a great agent and really smart guy in New York, and he passed away. So at the same time, we didn't have a publisher.
Whoa.
So we decided, let's just send it out to different things, and then it would come back. It never went anywhere. So we did a little self-publishing blurb on it or something. And so as an artist, taking on a social issue like that and making it like something that you would be able to give to people, so that the children, that weren't there for that, like your child or my grandchildren, they weren't around for that event.
Right.
But how do you share that with them without showing them the real footage where it's horrifying?
Exactly.
So how do you share this event in a way that's not going to demolish them or have nightmares or
Yeah.
And so that was her purpose, Joe's purpose, and mine was how do we make this a palatable story to tell of reality? And the same thing she did with Anne Frank. We did another book, again, unfinished, because we would need, who has time to do, all that work?
Yeah.
But that's also a beautiful way of living Anne Frank's existence in a little tiny room with only one window. And it was all focused on the tree outside and her life, the life that was in the tree, that the tree told her what time of year it was and whether there was a bird on it or not. Could you see the moonlight through the tree? A beautiful prose poem of that, and then the children that she'd see that had the yellow star on them, saying that, that they were Jewish and they were going to be, are they going to be ever safe? What's going to happen to them? And so that's another way of being an artist and a writer. How do you address a social issue in a way that's a marketing thing? It's a marketable commodity, but
Right.
it's still a personal project.
How are you going to get the message to people? How is the message going to stick?
Well, right now it hasn't gone to people. There's two projects that we have that are just sitting in, on my shelf and her shelf, because every now we attempt to put it out there, but there's just not the right place for that at the moment. I mean, there should be, because every time it's an anniversary, we'll do a poster and we resubmit it somewhere. But who wants to do that? Who wants to spend money on making a book that's going to tell the story? It's it should be for education.
Yeah.
It's an educational type of thing that's, so we haven't, but as an artist, going through the process of, it helped me to do something, to take the experience of this is horrible, and to get it out of my, just get it out on paper. Like you would, if you would write a song, if you have something tragic and sad for you, you might express yourself in music.
Right.
It might be who knows what that would be, but I think as artists, it helps to say, just even the things I did on the sketches of women with this gash in their abdomen, it's I just can't have this inside of me all the time.
Yeah.
I have to put it out there.
Well, I was going to say, maybe it's like the watercolors that you described coming out of your drawer 20 years later, 30 years later. Maybe that's this work as well. There's a time where you birth something because you're ready to describe it and do the work, but maybe the culture at large is still churning and catalyzing and changing and going through what it has to do to get where it needs to be.
Yes, because our life is hard. Life is tragic. Life has ups and downs. Life is full. I mean, as a parent, you're raising your children, and it's hard. You look at the young new lives coming, and you go, wow, this is wonderful and beautiful, but wow, how can I protect them from how can I help them be strong and thrive and be, resilient and not become hardened or disappointed or angry and rageful. And what we see with shootings and what we see with white young men having no place in the world, to feel like part of the world in an enriching way. We're seeing something really scary happening, and what is the remedy? And so as artists and thinkers, we're like, do we just ignore this and like, I'll turn off the TV? Or, hey, what do we do?
I had a client who asked me to collaborate on a song that he felt was very timely, which it was, and it was coming up for me to work on. I was like, okay, because the rainforest was burning down. And he had brought it up to me 4 months before, and I'd like, okay, this isn't the way I would express this, but he brought it up again. And I started to connect to it, and I became so traumatized because I have had to shut out the world, and I have had to insulate from, okay, this is happening, I know what's happening, but there's nothing I can do about it. And me participating in the traumatization, the reliving, the 24-hour news cycle, being in and everything, okay, now this breaking report, and now this just happened, and blah, blah, blah. It had to stop. So I've kind of had to go away from the world.
Yes.
Just for my own growth and sanity and peace.
Yes.
And so I connected with this piece, and what I found was I started to feel the panic of his perspective, which is part of it. His piece was also kind of sarcastic because he's a little bit political.
Yes.
And then I realized that I was actually connecting with all of the feeling of, oh my God, what are we going to do? How do we stop this? Panic and just utter sheer terror and fear. And it was so overwhelming to me. I think it kind of, it's been a rough couple weeks.
Yes.
And I had to put it aside. I had to say, I'm sorry. You're going to have to find someone else to work on this, because it was waking me up from the middle of the night, and I just couldn't handle it.
That's a wise choice. That's a really wise choice, because there'll come a time when there will be something that you will want to contribute to. But there has to be a balance, because that's something that I talked to recently with Joe. We were having coffee, and we were talking about the homeless situation and how, we're feeling a little helpless in our neighborhood. And her point was, well, we can do what we can with someone's right in front of us and in our territory. We can do stuff, we can help, but stand before 10,000 homeless people. One person's going to be so numbed out and overwhelmed. You become, there's nothing, it feels so hopeless. You get over, what can you do?
Yeah.
The antidote, I think, is that there are people that have the resiliency, and at the timing of it, it's their time, their place to enter the arena to say, well, we can do this. I can start with doing this thing. And there are people that are handling like things that we may not be able to handle, but they're like built and formed for that.
Yeah.
That is my hope, is that, because of the idea of collaboration, and everyone has a purpose. And, some people grow up and they just, I want to be a firefighter. I want to save people's lives. I want to be a doctor. I can't fathom that. What, you're going to be a doctor? That's really hard.
I am so glad there are nurses and doctors, because I would not be one of them. I'm so squeamish.
Yeah, it's definitely like we're all built, for a purpose. And I'm so grateful for that. And that's very comforting. But it doesn't solve this massive problem that we have. But there are people that are going to chip away at it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I think Jason, my older son, he's always reading something in very deep reading stuff, and especially science fiction and great writers. But he was reading about ancient history again, and pretty much the humanity of what the facts are that we know of in the history of humans. And he goes, you know what? We're not that nice a species. And so when, the sun gets too hot and we do, and our Earth is no longer habitable, and, that's probably not such a bad idea.
Well, tell me a little bit more about going back full circle to mentoring. You mentioned a young man who is a photographer who worked with you, or who learned from you.
Yes.
And he did a project recently.
Yes, Andy Hahn. So Andy I had California Film at the time. I was teaching briefly at Otis, broadcast designer, so whatever I was doing at the time. And he was a student, and he was really excellent. And he came into my office one day and said, I want to work for you. I'll work for half price, whatever. I just want to be here. I was like, okay, but no, we'll just, thank you. He turned out to be one of the best people ever. And I had so much fun working with him. And he was very much a cutting edge designer and he brought ideas and innovation, and he became his own leader. So as you know, when you have people work for you, eventually they're going to want to go do their own. If they're that leader,
Yeah.
you know, they're not a follower, they're a leader.
Should.
They're going to go want to start their own thing. And so when his time was moving on, he went on to do many great things in the world of design and et cetera. And so recently he showed up at one of Mitch's shows. Mitch had a show at the Copecan Gallery in LA last week, and Andy showed up. I hadn't seen him in 25 years or 30 years. And because Mitch is on social media, unlike me, he said, wow, I can track him down. So for him, there was no gap. I was there, Mitch was there. It was like nothing happened in between. And it was so great to see him. And it was just like, I always think about him. I follow him a little bit. I think I'm just, you know, you're so proud of when you get to know someone who's just so wonderful. And we chatted for a minute. He says, you know, I remember you mentored me. You know, you really taught me so much. I said, what? I don't remember anything, but that's great. That's good news. And he told me a quip of it. And he said he's now on his personal project being a photographer. And so he's a design creative director at Sony Imageworks right now or somewhere doing something like that. And it's a great job. But his he chose a personal path of expression. And that's photography, not trained. He said, look, I'm not trained, but this is what I'm doing. And so I looked at it and I was like, wow. He took on these personal projects of Hollywood Boulevard and Welcome to Hollywood and the street people, because Hollywood Boulevard, as you know,
has Musicians Institute.
You know well,
so
then.
right there by the Wax
there.
Museum.
Yes, yeah. And the colorful characters and just the whole unbelievable, you know, universe right there, its own universe.
Yes.
And so he started documenting, taking photographs of the different people, and he had relationships with them, and some of them were homeless. And in his little description of this, he said he made relationships with the people, and I know that he was helping them. And because he was raised by a pastor, a Baptist, his early life was always, his father was someone who would always want to help people and lift people up. And so that was his background. And so I was so moved by his gift that he did of this 2 books, and he self-published, because who's going to publish a book about street people on Hollywood Boulevard? I don't know who, but they should, because it's brilliant work. And he was so humble about, I'm not even a trained photographer. It didn't matter. He has a good eye, his eye for people. And the fact that he related to people, it was so relational. I definitely think is someone that you'd want to meet. But yeah, so the fact that he had the mentorship, I mentored him just because he worked for me, and I was just sharing the two-way street you're talking about. It's a give and a take.
Yeah.
So the things that I learned from him in the process of wow, he would bring forth ideas and thoughts, and I'd have to I consider them okay, that isn't what I would have thought of, but yeah, that's a really good approach. And
I've always done it this way because shortest path from A to B, but maybe it's not the best path.
No, but so it's definitely a trade-off. And that is the best kind of relationship, especially creatively. You know, you always want to see people's ideas and hear their thoughts, especially if they're good. They're good and they're kind. And I think Andy had that and still has that kind quality that he has. And in terms of, I have no idea regarding his spirituality, but the fact that he could go forth and walk the streets and have compassion for people and be inclusive and want to tell their story says a lot about this man, a very genuine and authentic person, along with his beautiful wife, Candace, who's also a remarkable woman, and he's got 2 grown children, 2 grown guys. So he's gone through the parenting process and the having to support a family and still found a way to do personal art. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, your daughter, Asia, is also an artist as well, right?
She is. And she never thought of herself as one because she went through the journey we did and was affected by the decade of darkness, also taken advantage of, or like, so just as a young woman going through that, as a girl, adolescent, that affected her perception of herself. And so she had to mature and recover from that, and find out that she too is a really talented designer, artist with her eye, and also because of her social skills, because she's very adept at collaborating and wanting to work with people. She doesn't like to be alone. She likes to collaborate and work with the team. She's excelling right now. I have to say, I'm so proud of her. She's branding a bakery, believe it or not.
Wow.
In Sherman Oaks, a startup, which is a nonprofit and benefits education for children in Haiti. So
Wow.
it has a nice purpose besides being a really wonderful high-end specialty bakery. You'll find out it's called Josephine's. But the fact that she took this on and is doing taking on real huge projects and still being a working mother with her beautiful children. Yeah, she's an example of like, wow, this is, she calls me every day. I'm exhausted. I picked up the girls, brought them to writing, and I still have a project I have to deliver to the printer. It's like, I know. Yep, you're doing great. You're young. You're gonna do fine. As are you. You're young.
Yeah, I guess. What occurs to me is there's just so many opportunities to do good as an artist and as an entrepreneur and in this world with your talents and your gifts. And something you said to me before we got here really stuck with me.
Was it this morning on the phone?
Yes. And that was, what we do is not ultimately about the art.
Yes. At the end of the day, whether you see value in the product you make or the whatever it might have been, what was really important in reflecting is that it's all about the people in your life and what you share with them.
I know that you're very elusive online. If people wanted to connect with you or your work, is there a singular place that they can arrive?
There will be.
You have wendyvanguard.com, right?
I do, but I let that go on pause. So I will have that back. I had to decide, like, this is to actually be in a podcast and to talk to you. Thank goodness it's you. Or share my personal art was a huge first step for me. So I think I'm ready to do that. And I think I'm happy with you sharing the art on your podcast or whatever it is that you're doing. Would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think I'm ready in the near future to put myself out there on some media. Just share some paintings or some thoughts. Is that your advice? Because are you out there? You are.
I am definitely out there.
And as a producer, and you know me well, what would you recommend for me?
So I worked on 2011 a project called The Venus Illuminato and a song called Civil War Ballad. So that's probably my coup de grace of producing in terms of vibe, story, and, gravitas.
Wow. I like the title.
Yeah. And I just worked on Spirals and Portals EP by Lobate Scarp. That is now officially out
Awesome.
on all formats. Very, very proud of that work. And we have some good stuff coming up with that. If we can get funding for the second phase of that project, It promises to be pretty exciting. I have another project in the works which I can't discuss yet, but hopefully that is something that you are hearing about, not from me. I would hope that you hear about it from some grocery store radio player or something like that.
All right.
But we'll see what happens. So, yeah.
Can I say something about you? So having seen you over the years, knowing you as a young man at 16, and then after that in your marriage, your wedding, and your live music when you came to Studio City to play your organ for something, it was like astonishing, your talent and how you could express yourself through that cool instrument, which I still love. Jimmy Smith, hello. Just that's part of you, and you're so diverse as you've grown now into getting close to the other decade of your life as now a father, and what you're doing here in the studio and as a podcaster. and being able to dialogue about so many interesting topics. I'm just so blown away by who you have become. I'm just so happy proud to know you. And that you'd even include me in a discussion is daunting.
That was a no-brainer. The hard part was getting you here, getting you on a microphone.
Yeah, that's really tough for me to be a little public here. But I appreciate it. I feel you made me feel so safe and so professional. You're really good at this. I hope you go far with this, and people listen to you, and you're bringing so many good topics and information to us all. We really are grateful. Speaking to all you listeners out there, tune in.
Share and subscribe and leave comments in the iTunes store, because that's what helps podcasts grow. So thank you, Wendy Vanguard. It's wonderful to see you again.
It's great. You look awesome, by the way.
You look awesome, by the way. And you sound amazing. Your wisdom and depth, and like you said, a mentoring relationship is sharing a part of yourself and helping to mold someone and to help them grow. It's like tending a garden, I think.
Indeed it is.
And making sure that there's the conditions to flourish. And
yes.
So I was very fortunate that I got to spend 3 years working with you. And I think about it often. And so it's such an honor to have you here in the studio and to get to interview you today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Steve.
If you are interested in any of the things that Wendy and I talk about, we do very, very rich show notes at the end of every episode. So check those out, and you can follow links to the Eames office. You can look at the artwork that Wendy and I shared, and Powers of 10 movie, and everything that we talk about in the show is carefully documented in the show notes. Music in this episode was contributed by Jason Dobrowner and Josh Dobrowner, with additional scoring by yours truly. The original theme music was composed by Lobate Scarp, whose new EP, Spirals and Portals, was produced by Stephen Leavitt, that's me, and is available on iTunes, Spotify, and many other online retailers. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. I'm Stephen Leavitt. Thanks for listening.